next session is going to be presented by Johann Bence from the Reserve Bank. It's going to be on the international and domestic currency developments. Just some background on Johann. He was appointed head of the Currency Management Department in July 2012. He joined the bank in 1982 and has worked in the Executive Management Department, the National Payment System Department, the Business System and Technology Department, and then the Research Department. He holds various MCOM, BCOM degrees. I was looking this morning at my email, and I received an email from LinkedIn and from the payment experts. And the question is, how long will cash survive? So also, and I'm going to preempt this, what we will have, Johann will present for 30 minutes, and we will have a Q&A session afterwards. But Johann, also my question is, with this whole optimization of cash and so on, how do you see the integration of non-banks in the cash environment? Ladies and gentlemen, let's just put our hands together for Johann. Johann.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you, Pierre, for the introduction. And also, thank you for this opportunity. I'll stick to 30 minutes. I can talk a lot. I'm an extrovert, apparently, the psychologists tell me. So, welcome to the old faces, and also the new faces. And I'm not saying old because you are old, okay? It's just because I've been knowing you for a long time. I need to apologize up front. I bragged to a friend just before the weekend that the flu hasn't got a hold of me. And yesterday afternoon, believe me or not, I couldn't walk 10 meters. So just bear with me if I'm a bit shaky and if I'm a bit hazy. And Pierre, if I fall over, just give me some water. So look, apparently I'm invited to speak at these conferences to be controversial. And I'm going to be a bit controversial. Just by way of introduction, in 2010, a previous governor, Joe Marcus, called me to a residence and said, you know, Johann, we've been predicting cash to disappear for up at that stage, 20 years. We've got to refocus the business and have a look at what's happening. And I'll tell you this morning why it's not disappearing. And the Reserve Bank doesn't see cash and electronic developments as competitive. We see it as complementary. And I'll talk to you that a bit later on. So briefly, I'm going to put my hypothesis to you, and then we're going to test it. For the academics, I'm going to make a statement, and then we're going to see if I'm right or wrong. Then briefly touch on international developments, what's happening out there, and I'll briefly touch on what central banks are doing in the cyberspace towards the end of the presentation. I can't say too much of that at this moment in time. Believe me, we as a central bank, when you speak to other central banks, they're also very secretive. So it would appear it's cards hold to chest. And then touch more on the domestic developments, and I'll tell you what we're doing in this environment, and then the conclusion. So my hypothesis is the following: cash is here to stay longer. And what are the reasons for it? And obviously, this could take a full day if I need to tell you what is driving cash still in the world. But briefly, I'm going to touch on not natural disasters, because they come and go, actually man-made disasters. Okay? Now, if you ever thought we're going to live in a world where electronic payments will become obsolete, it is possible. A year ago, I had to initiate a work group in the central bank as a contingency work group to look at electricity outages. And we are currently working with the central bank, should this happen. The probability about 10%, but the impact massive. And you all know from risk management, if the impact is huge, even with a small probability, a central bank needs to take note of that. Yes, global financial crises. Now that is another 4-day discussion. I'm starting off with Greece, when the peaks, Portugal, Italy, Greece and Spain, when they were wobbling in Europe, not long ago, people said if Greece exit the European Union will be under severe threat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, early first week of June, we had Brexit. And the world's biggest speculator, George Soros, said, read about him over the weekend, the long-term consequences of this is still going to play out. It would appear in a volatile world that cash becomes the preferred method of payment. I spent time in Greece just after the global financial crisis. With great respect to the credit card companies, if you took out a Visa or MasterCard, they turned around and walked away. They wanted cash because the banking system wasn't safe. As I stand here, and I'm not allowed to speak on that, I'm not mandated to speak about that currently, but just over the weekend I just saw a major German bank. Remember, Germany is the core economy in Europe. A core German bank is restructuring their business to a big extent. What does that say to you? It says to you, if you think that everything is hunky-dory in the banking system, just go read on Google, because I can't say these things. Go read on Google. Google challenges in Europe. It would appear we're not over the financial woes or economic woes as yet. We live in challenging times. Europe becoming a hotspot in terms of politics and also economic challenges. Spoke to friends in Germany over the weekend. And huge racial tension in the heartland of Europe. And it's got political consequences as well. What has that got to do with cash? I'll explain to you a bit later on. But as we move along, we realized that cash is not disappearing. And the previous governor called me and said we need to re-engineer the business. For you or who in this business, it's a very expensive business. We had to look at ways and means to become more efficient in terms of infrastructure, human resources, business processes, technology, and inventory holdings. Now, a banknote is nothing different to any other product. It's got to be produced, it's got to be stored, there's a wholesale market, there's a retail market, it's got to be distributed to your clients, who are you. And then lastly, the only difference to a normal product is it's got to be destroyed. So we take poor quality notes out of circulation and we destroy it. Maybe a bit of small print. Those are the projections for cash going forward. At this moment in time, there is no business deal breaker that's really substituting cash. Electronic means and payments are growing, some of them exponentially, but cash is growing in the same vein, very stable at between 5 to 10% per year. On a global scale, it is massive. China, India, it's a massive business. Emerging economies like ourselves, that's got a dualistic nature, advanced and a less advanced economy. It's also growing in our country at least double figures and more. If there's hyperinflation, go and Google Venezuela. You will see what's happening in that environment. With inflation, you have to print more money, physical money as well, to support the public in terms of purchasing their goods and services. So why did I put Sweden on the board? Why did I put Sweden on the board? Sweden said not long ago, they'll be the first cashless economy in the world. And they're making all effort to achieve this. So, and I don't want to underestimate your reading skills, but let's just go through it. It says, we're on our way to becoming cashless. Then look at the next paragraph. A legal duty on banks to provide cash. Nogal Sweden, eh? Look at this one. The governor said they reduced the cash holdings too soon. Okay, so let's go past Sweden. France. Pursue large projects to have a strong cash cycle. UK. So you see the second paragraph, Victoria Cleland. She's currently the head cashier, as I used to say in South Africa. You're the head cashier, she's the head cashier in the UK. She spent 10 years in the electronic environment, a national payment system environment. I spent 15 years there. Past 3 years in a physical cash environment. She was moved from the electronic environment to the cash environment. The mini-me, same. Moved from the electronic environment back into the cash environment. Same in Australia. The lady as well who was running the payment system in Australia. Michelle Bullock moved from electronic environment back into the cash environment. So look, I don't want to bore you with too much detail, and this is maybe, just want to give you the supply chain. You got the production. Then we store at the depot. We go via our CIT operations to our branches, CIT back into the banks, cash centers, CIT companies, retailers and ATMs, the public. And I'm just going to go through this quite quickly because I don't want to bore you with the detail, but I want to say to you is, this is a massive business. Massive. The currency management department of which I'm heading contributes to more than 50% of the bank's annual OPEX, operational budget. I'm not even talking about capital. I'm not even talking about branches and infrastructure and people. In my department, 30% of the bank staff is working in the currency environment. And the commercial banks have the same challenges, have exactly the same challenges, very expensive. Talk to some of the banks, can't mention names, they tell you, yes, you want to be battling to break even. Serious. Very expensive. So why do you want to move away from cash? Well, it's very expensive. Very risky business, and I'll touch on it briefly. So what did we do and what we are busy with? We have to re-engineer this whole supply chain. Ladies and gentlemen, go and do your research. The modern world will consist of supply chains competing against supply chains, whether it's motor cars, tin of food, exactly the same. Supply chains will compete against supply chains. And we had to re-engineer this business. Firstly, we have to look at modern supply chain technologies. And we could spend another 2 days on this. It's actually to bring the supply and demand closer. Historically at the bank, we forecasted on historic information for the past 5 years what inventory we will hold at the Reserve Bank. It's going to change. We're going to bring supply and demand much closer to manage our inventory much optimally. I use the words projections versus forecasting. Historically, we used to use historic information to forecast. Now we fine-tune it into projections. Optimal physical infrastructure. Infrastructure in the cash environment is humongous, and the cost. Go and try a build, secure, and safe cash center today. 1 billion rand? One. For one cash center. Your central bank wants to, if we want to build a few more, couple of billion. That's a capital side. I haven't touched on the operational side. I haven't touched on HR and systems. Huge expenditure. Location, well, we need to also optimize on where you put this infrastructure. It needs to be close to the cash cycle. Processing at source is becoming a very logical concept. That is, banks don't want to travel with their CIT operations hundreds of kilometers. They want to have the site where they process cash close to where it's being used. Now, typically Gauteng contributes to about 50 to 60% of the cash demand in South Africa. Between the Cape Province and KwaZulu-Natal, you can add another 15 to 20%. Those are the more important cash intensive centers in the world. So what is happening in the world and also internationally with other central banks? They're building larger cash centers to get economies of scale. And automation is becoming very important. Why? Well, simply put, you can depreciate technology and machines. You can't depreciate human resources. So what I'm saying to you is, over time, it makes more financial sense to automate if you have natural attrition and staff is leaving your environment, and to replace that with automated processing machines and infrastructure. And yes, so funny enough, shouldn't come as a surprise to you, theft and shrinkage is a real challenge in the cash environment. And secondly, it goes hand in hand with guns. Guns. Huge security risk. The light went on the Monday morning. Light went on. Something is happening. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, are you fine, my brother? You sure? So over time, what is happening in the world? Optimized supply chains, optimized infrastructure, more automation to make this a cheaper and more effective environment. So what is fascinating about the world that we are living in? And if people tell me 20 years ago that I'm going to tell you today that technology is supporting cash, you're going to tell me you're smoking something. And this is exactly what's happening. With cash not disappearing, technology is being utilized to make it more efficient and more effective. Historically, people thought of it strategically as two competing domains. In actual fact, the one is helping the other. Let me give you another example. I need to be careful what I say. Is the press here present today? Mr. Cameraman, you're shaking your head. You're not a cameraman from the SABC. So not long ago, there was an effort to take away cash from clients, and debit cards were introduced. They wanted the public to transact via debit cards. Do you actually know what happened? The banks had to install more ATMs and a more intensive ATM infrastructure. And I think the cash withdrawals increased by 30% in the country. Another fascinating phenomenon is that although cash in itself is globally growing about 5 to 6 to 7%, ATMs in the world is growing 25 to 30% per annum. Spent time in Brazil, wanted to learn how they deal with cash in the environment. Also a dualistic economy, sophisticated, well-developed and less developed. Interesting challenges they have when you go into the Amazon. Cash is being transported via motorboats, rubber dinkies. Okay. They don't have the same crime problem that we have, eh? So technology being a key business driver in the cash cycle. And another phenomena or another business concept that we are looking into is start tracking and tracing cash. So where's the cash cycle? Where's the intensity? How long does a banknote, what's the durability of a banknote? Why is it important for us? It's a simple inventory product. The longer it stays out there, the less we have to produce, the cheaper it is for us. So watch the space. We might be looking into something different. Before I get to the digital side, just hold your breath. Might be looking at different types of substrate, or as they say, paper in South Africa. No, it's not polymer. Don't get concerned. So we are looking into these things. We need to make our banknote more durable because it's so expensive. On average, R1 to produce one banknote. South Africans demand approximately 1.5 billion banknotes per annum. 1.5 billion B per annum. Logically, your logic will tell you, we also have to destroy as much, more or less the same amount, to keep your poor notes, or to take them out of circulation. Expensive. So I told you how expensive it is for the central bank. Just to produce banknotes, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 billion rand a year. I haven't spoken about coin. Okay? I haven't even touched on coin. Good. So now this is the wonderful thing I want to tell you. We're also starting to look at a banknote as a product, and the end user being You, the public. So there's a lot of information out there. I just read over the weekend, big data is actually a lie. It's small data that's aggregated. And then you get the holistic picture. Okay? And I had a lot of other anecdotes about big data, but I can't go into it on a Monday morning. So a lot of pieces of information in this huge supply chain, from production to destruction. Simple question. Which denomination do you think holds longer, is more durable? Yes? Sorry, my brother? Yeah, the 200. So it would appear that the higher the denomination, the less it turns in the economy, the more durable it is. But the smaller denominations, the high turnover banknotes, we are looking to make them more durable. Watch the space. Can't say too much today. Okay? So we're going to look for a more durable paper. We're investigating it. We have to do it. Just a matter of interest. It's not just the holistic economies where there's interesting developments in terms of banknotes. In the US and Europe, they call the higher denomination banknote a what? Investment note. An investment note. Why? You want to deposit your money in the bank is giving you 0.003%. And you must pay the deposit and withdrawal fee. Doesn't make sense to bank large denominations in some countries. We're living in an age where interest rates are close to zero. Fortunately not in South Africa, but definitely in other countries. Have you ever thought about this? Bond yields are negative. Do you know what that means? Traditionally, central banks or governments issued bonds, government bonds. They gave you interest payments either quarterly, every 6 months, or once a year, for the interest they're giving you for borrowing your money. And then towards maturity, they give you your bond and your capital back. Or you give the bond and they give you the capital back, which is normally the nominal value. The interest they pay you is the time value. Do you know what negative bond yields mean? You ever thought about it very simply put? In Europe, in the US, or definitely in Switzerland and Japan, the government is borrowing money from you, and you are paying them to borrow from you. I'm serious. So why would you put your money into a bank account and you pay a withdrawal and deposit fee? These are business drivers of cash in the world. Business drivers of cash in the world. The whole economy is upside down. Let's be fair this morning. It is a Monday morning. But internationally, we have serious challenges. And please don't call me doomsday prophet. If I wasn't the optimist, I would have been standing here today. These are the challenges we face. Turned upside down, turned world with new challenges. And we got to think fresh. What I'm doing this morning to you is to test your thinking models. Did you come to a conference to hear boring news you can Google every weekend? It's not my objective. It's to make you think. Think different about life. Think different about opportunities and what's waiting out there. If you want to live in a boring world, it's not the place for you. We have to think differently. Our business models have to be different. Inventory management, I briefly touched on if you better projection of future cash levels, optimize our position, track and trace function, stated that. Now, I know you can't read the slide, but I did it on purpose, okay? So this is from production to destruction. Okay? And I told you earlier on, small pieces of information you need to aggregate to understand the whole supply chain. And what fascinating developments are transpiring, putting big data together. We've just last year introduced, well, some of you would know, most probably one of the most complex, integrated IT systems in the history of the central bank. The Integrated National Cash Management System, phase 1. Phase 2, we're going to integrate all these pieces of information. To understand, for instance, let's say a banknote gets destroyed by us because that security threat was a problem. What does that mean? We need to change it at production. You hear what I'm saying? Integrated supply chain. Holistically looking at the banknote supply chain. So, I'm not going to go through this detail. I know it's Monday morning. But just to give you a feeling of all the pieces of information about cash that we are busy optimizing. So conclusions. Conclusions, Pierre. I've been busy for 25 minutes. 4 minutes to go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is important? The integration of the whole supply chain of banknotes. More advanced inventory or dynamic replenishment. Lower security costs. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to say too much about it, but people are losing their lives in this business. In South Africa, it's a dangerous business. So you also attempt to reduce traveling distances and logistical costs and security costs. But I wish I had time to tell you about the other challenge we have in the electronic space, cybersecurity. If you are concerned about payment mechanisms in the physical space, watch the cyberspace. I happen to know how many attacks there were in the South African banking system last year. It's massive. So why am I saying this to you? Very often people say we need to take cash out because of the security problem. Oh my word. I told you I'm going to challenge your thinking models. Go and think about cybersecurity. The Reserve Bank last year and at the beginning of the year put in place a cybersecurity unit, just focusing on cybersecurity and growing, and cooperating with the banking system. Already spoke about transport and logistical costs, infrastructure, big data analysis, and really making sense of big data. And as you know, you have data, then you have information, and then you get to intelligence, and then you get intelligence on intelligence, meta-intelligence. It's no use in having all this big data. We need to make something of that information, create intelligence out of it. Why? Optimize the whole currency supply chain to make it more affordable and efficient. The best for last. So I'm not going to say too much. I'm not mandated to speak on that today. But many central banks in the world obviously investigating this environment, this arena. And there are different models out there. So watch the space. At the central bank, we don't see electronic and cash as competitive. It's complementary because we have to provide it to the public. So, ladies and gentlemen, well, let me see. How long will cash last? That was your first question. Well, I don't know. You need to decide. I don't think the days are done for cash. Non-banks. Yes, I wish I could speak about digital currencies. And then we could have spoken about non-banks. In actual fact, the biggest, on the physical cash side, the biggest expense, or how should I put it, the biggest purpose of cash in this economy is to buy food. Have you thought about it that way? What do you buy frequently? Basically every day. Food. Speak to the food retailers, they'll tell you a big chunk of their sales are cash. Okay. So who's really using cash? The public, they're a non-bank, eh? And the retailers, the food retailers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for listening to me. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, so what we're seeing is that the question posed by payment experts is that cash is not dying. And my conclusion is this is based on international trend as well as the huge investment that South Africa is having into the development and optimization of the cash environment. So that's my conclusion, but do you have any questions, other questions to Johann? Question over there. second question over there.
Yes, sir.
Let's just pass on the
Oh, the mic. Sure.
first question.
Morning. And you are?
I just have a question. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, some African president received the African passport. I don't know how it's going to work. There was no much of information about it. Is there a way that South Africa is looking at the African currency, or in the SADC region into an African regional currency? Is it coming, or will we be waiting forever?
Thank you for the question. Very good question. It's not coming. It has happened already. The rand has been circulating in SADC quite extensively. Don't want to mention countries' names, but even as north as Kenya, the rand is circulating. Just north of our borders, being used as a major currency to transact. It's not whether it's coming. It has happened already, I promise you. I can't say too much, but it's there. So over there.
Tarai from Visa here. I remember reading somewhere that in South Korea there's a tax incentive for using electronic payments. Cash is obviously a big cost from what you're saying. Is there something existing that I'm not aware of, or are there any plans to bring tax incentives or some sort to encourage more electronic payments? The advantages are many. You reduce these costs, you get more money flowing in the formal system, therefore you can collect more taxes. So is there anything that is being done to make sure that you actively promote the usage of electronic payments?
Oh, not actively, but implicitly, the Reserve Bank invested a lot of money into electronic developments, large value payment systems, discussing strategic developments with banks to enhance electronic payments. But I can tell you, my brother, we need to be careful when we talk about tax interventions. My experience over 35 years is the moment you start introducing taxes, you actually get the opposite effect. So how would people, let's say cybersecurity becomes a major problem, and we incentivize that via tax incentives, how are you going to morally support that discussion? So no, not tax, definitely not. I don't like tax. And I don't think tax should be used to drive business models. It should be driven by the demand from the public, my view. Okay. Then there was a gentleman over here. Yes.
Môre Johann, Reineveld van der Horst. Quick question on virtual currencies, specifically Bitcoin. Does the bank see that as a risk, both from a regulatory point of view and secondly from a cash and electronic payment point of view? Thanks.
So I think I did say in the beginning, I spent 15 years in electronic environment and 3 years in a physical environment. The Reserve Bank does not see any new development as a risk, but what the central bank does is to monitor it to see if it doesn't become a risk. But I'm not mandated to speak on that today. Why? There's a lot of work being done currently, and I think in a year's time you'll get a lot of, new information. I think I said in the beginning, central banks are very secretive. When I speak to central banks internationally about their monitoring of digital currencies and whatever, e-currencies, digital currencies, blockchain, electronic legal tender, they all say they're not busy with it, but I know they're busy with it. Bank of England just published a document towards the end of last week on different electronic models for central banks. So it's happening, and I think in a year's time that you will hear and see much about it. It's just today, as we stand here, we can't say too much about it. But don't underestimate central banks. We have to monitor and see what's happening. Yes, sir.
Good morning, hi.
Yeah, sure.
Ricardo from the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Thanks for your presentation, your sense of
Do you know
humour.
Michelle Bullock?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. A little bit. Thanks for your presentation, your sense of humour. It's been a good half an hour. My question is about cash, not at the retail end, but at the interbank, both in country and kind of cross country, do you see that growing or declining?
Well, look, I already alluded to the rand circulating north and more north in Africa, definitely. I'm also told, because these people contact us, I'm also told that it's quite popular in the Middle East, in Dubai. Now, I don't know what is the business driver of that. I'm really honest about that, but it's happening. Why? Because some service providers came to us and said they wanted to buy directly from the Reserve Bank and supply it in the Middle East. So I don't know. I'm just telling you what is happening. You will also note, you said humoristic. You will also note there's a lot of people being caught at our Tambo with a lot of cash in their suit bags. Eh? So I don't know if you leave this country where it's going, and I also don't know if it's coming into this country from where it's coming. But it's happening. It's happening. A very well-known South African entrepreneur, was caught with pounds in his suitcase traveling between Europe and the UK. So one can only imagine for what reason. Just one brief thing again. So it would appear what is supporting cash is the anonymity, right? There are professional people in Pretoria. I actually bought a painting 2 weeks ago. The price was X amount for the painting, and the lady said if you pay cash, it's 5% less. That is what? The credit card fee. It also doesn't go through the books. Now, I don't support immoral behavior, but I like a bargain. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the weekend.